Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. Superfuse is a comic book styled hack and slash action RPG with a rich and accessible skill customization system. This game has been released on January 31st in early access and the full release will be later this year. You can play this game in solo offline or multiplayer online with up to 4-player co-op. The game has 3 different classes and you can fuse multiple superpowers to hyper-tailor your hero based on your playstyle. However, the 4th class will be released later this year. Many thanks to Raw Fury and Stitchhead Entertainment for sponsoring this video. You can use my link in the description to buy the game on Steam if you like what you see in the video. I already made 2 videos about Superfuse that could help you a lot if you plan to play this game. The first video was for some general tips and the second one was for the best beginner build you can play. Feel free to check them out if you didn't already. In this video, I'm going to give you a brief overview of all available classes in the early access. Those will be the Berserker, Elementalist and Technomancer. All of these classes have unique spells and different playstyles, but the idea for all builds stays the same. You're going to use the highly customizable fuse system, which allows you to create some crazy combinations. The first class we're going to talk about is the Berserker.
What's up?
As the name would suggest, he has some melee skills, but he also has a lot of ranged spells that you can use as well. He's the only class in the game with 3 different skill trees. Brute Force is the first skill tree and it combines ranged and AoE melee spells. Power Punch is the first spell you can get if you decide to go with this skill tree in the beginning of the game. This is a pretty good ranged ability and there are a bunch of different fuses you can use to improve it. You can even find a specific fuse which increases the range of this ability. Or you can combine it with a knockback fuse and easily keep enemies off you if you're going for a range build. He also has a useful buff in the skill tree and a slam spell which you can turn into your primary source of damage with a couple of good fuses. Just like all AoE spells in the game, you can turn it into something crazy with the right fuses. Slam is actually a weapon skill and there are specific fuses that only work on weapon skills. Leap is the last ability in the skill tree and it does exactly what the name suggests. The second option you have to build your Berserker is by investing points into combat skill tree. Frenzy is the name of the first spell you can get in the skill tree. This is a very powerful melee weapon skill because with each third attack you get to deal some very good damage. I've experimented a lot with different weapon types and in my experience, if you want to use Frenzy effectively, it's best to find 2 one-handed swords. The attack speed seems to be very important for Frenzy and it's kinda logical because you want to trigger that third attack as soon as possible. The faster you do that, the more damage you deal. This skill tree also provides you with a buff spell and later on you'll get to unlock Heavy Strike and Tornado spell. Heavy Strike is pretty similar to Slam ability from the Brute Force skill tree, while Tornado is basically your Whirlwind spell in this game. I mean, every action RPG nowadays has to include a spin to win ability, and I'm not complaining. The last skill tree you can choose to play with if you go with a Berserker is Lighting. This should be your primary choice if you plan to play as a ranged Berserker. The first spell called Lighting Bolt is very powerful in general. Then of course you get a buff as the second spell, like with pretty much all classes and skill trees. Later on you'll get to unlock a shield spell as well as a very powerful AoE spell called Thunder. You really can't go wrong with the Berserker. He has ranged and melee spells that you can customize a lot with the right fuses. And he should be your primary choice if you want to play a melee character in general. Elementalist has Fire and Frost skill trees.
Let's get started.
I played a lot with Frost spells and it's the most fun I had in the game in general. Frost spells offer you great crowd control as well as amazing AoE damage. But that's not all, you also get a very decent melee spell as well. Frostblades works very similar to Berserker's Frenzy spell. You strike the enemy in melee range and the third attack deals some heavy damage. It's very customizable with fuses, and you can easily turn your Elementalist into a melee class with this skill alone, or you can choose to use it only when it's needed. Even in its default state, it can be a good filler damage spell, but of course you can customize it with different fuses and improve it a lot. The second spell you can unlock in the Frost tree is called Ice Shard, and it's a basic range spell that you can use. Even in its default state, it can be a good filler damage spell, but of course you can customize it with different fuses and improve it a lot. The next spell you can unlock in the Frost tree is called Chill. It's an amazing crowd controlling spell that you should use regardless of what build you're going for. It slows down enemies with a big area of effect, which gives you a lot of control over your enemies. Then we have Glacier, which is one of my most favorite spells in the game. I've just made a video based around this spell, so feel free to check that out. It's a great AoE damaging spell and it's highly customizable. You can make some crazy good and cool looking visual effects with this spell, which also deal crazy AoE damage. And last two spells in the tree are Ice Wall, which you can use for defense, and Comet as an ultimate damaging AoE spell. Overall, I highly recommend Frost Skill Tree, especially for beginners. If you want to go full Berserk mode with your spells, Fire Skill Tree is the way to go. Fireball is the first fire spell in the tree. This is a highly customizable spell, like most projectiles in the game. The second spell in the tree is called Torch. Torch gives you energy regeneration and it damages nearby enemies. Then we have the Combust spell, which deals AoE damage around your character. The next spell in the tree is called Blaze, and it's a melee skill. Unlike Frostblades, which makes your third attack in a row very powerful, Blaze utilizes the second attack in a row. And just like Frostblades, you can use Dash Rune on this spell if you want to zip around the map. Instead of a Frost Wall, Fire Elementalist has, well, Firewall. Firewall deals AoE damage over time and it protects your PC from viruses. And last, but definitely not least, we have Meteor. Meteor is obviously a great skill for dealing some heavy fire damage. That will cover all the spells from the Elementalist. Now let's talk about the Technomancer. If you like to play summoner classes in action RPGs, well, Technomancer is the class for you. But let's first talk about the Metal skill tree. Technomancer has a very powerful range spell called Metal Shards. This is the first spell you get in the skill tree and it just wrecks through enemies in the first couple of levels. You only need to upgrade this skill a couple of times with whatever fuse you can find and it will continue doing some great damage. The second spell is, well, you can probably guess by now, it's a buff. But it's not just a regular buff. Remember the Metal Shard spell that we just talked about? Well, Metal Shard leaves metal scraps all over the place when you cast it, and you can retrieve these metal scraps with the Salvage spell. The buffs you get from the Salvage spell depends on how much scrap you salvaged. You can get health and energy buffs if you salvage enough metal scraps from the ground. You will need to aim this spell towards the scrap you want to salvage though. It's worth mentioning that the scrap won't be forever on the ground, it will disappear. This creates a nice little gameplay loop for the Technomancer, it's pretty cool. The next spell in the tree is very similar to Elementalist Ice Block, it basically does the same thing. Then we have the Scrap Ball spell, which also uses metal scrap on the ground. And the Bolt Storm spell, which consumes all metal shards in an area around yourself at the target location. So yeah, the metal skill tree has a very unique gameplay loop, which I personally find more interesting than summoning minions. Speaking about that, the minion skill tree is just what it sounds. It gives you a couple of different spells to summon different minions, which you can also modify a lot with fuses. You have a melee, ranged and support minion, as well as a unique minion you can summon with the last spell called Construct. There are some very interesting fuses you can use to modify your minions, so you can go crazy with this build as well. And that will be all, I guess. I hope this will help you with your class choice, but if you got the time, I recommend trying out all of them and see what suits you the best. Check out my previous videos about this game, and if you plan to buy Superfuse on Steam, you can use my link in the description. Once again, many thanks to Raw Fury and Stitchhead Entertainment for sponsoring this video. If you like the video or you find it useful, pressing the like button and subscribing to the channel would be highly appreciated. And if you wanna go a step further, you can always become a Patreon or a YouTube member. Even the smallest support amount means a lot. Thanks a lot to all of my current supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.